Hey, Chris Wheatley here from Hot Tub University, and today we're going to have a little chat while I'm driving to Yarmouth. So I'm not actually touching my phone, so I don't think I'm breaking any laws here. And I'm really not even going to look at you any more than I look at my instrumentation. So where you happen to be sitting, it's right in my instrumentation. So I think it's safe. Anyway, long story short, we are going to talk about the different types of hot tub companies and how that can affect both your hot tub purchase and frankly, the quality of your product. So if we look at it, there's three kinds of hot tub companies, and I'm going to break them into two subcategories. We got the big guys, and that's your Hot Springs and your Masters and your Sundance and your jacuzzis and guys like that. And then we got your little regional guys. We'll talk about regional guys quickly because that's an easy one to get out of the way. And small regional manufacturers, and I hate to say this because I'm a small businessman and I love the idea of supporting our small businessmen. And small businessmen are the backbone of the economy and all this other stuff. But the problem is on a complex manufacturing scale, they just simply can't really afford to innovate. And not only can they not afford to innovate, they can't even afford to implement innovation when it comes down the pipe. And really it's just a volume thing. They just don't do enough volume. They don't make enough money. So when small regional manufacturers like Hydropool or oh my God, there's tons of them. In fact, probably 80% of them out there. Sunrise and Viking and anyways, tons and tons and tons. They just really can't afford it. So what they end up doing is they end up doing one or two things really well. They'll hand roll their shells or they'll glue and clamp their joints. They'll be full of cheap Chinese parts and no insulation. Or vice versa. They'll do great insulation, great parts, but cradle supported shells, blah, blah, blah. The long and the short of it is a lot of times what we're getting with these guys is recycled tech. So when everybody else abandons the technology for something better, or when the innovators do, a number of years later, if nobody else is using that technology, they can rebrand it and make it sound like it's an innovative new tech. So you got to be really careful. In my opinion, there's almost nobody in that small or mid-sized manufacturing group that's really making a top sustainable product. There just isn't. Simple as that. So let's go to the big guys, because the truth is, those little regional guys are as good as half of the big guys. Because when we look at the big guys, here's what we get. We get two groups. We've got the guys that are spending money to build phenomenal quality products. So they are using the most expensive parts. They're putting the cash into the tub. Okay, they're buying Balboa, they're buying waterways, they're filling the cavity with insulation. And we can sit here and argue what insulation is better and what parts list is better and is it worth gluing and clamping the joints and blah, blah, blah. But the truth is, if we look at it from a monetary standpoint, the most expensive way to do it, inevitably, is the best way to do it. That's why it's expensive. I mean, come on, let's face it. In the real world, if there was a less expensive way to do something that was better, everybody would do it. We wouldn't even have this debate. So the other group, and this in my opinion is your guys like Hot Springs and Arctic and Jacuzzi and Sundance. And the reason I don't and wouldn't put these guys on my floor is partially the parts list is usually a proprietary parts list. It's one of the things that some of the big guys do. But the other thing is they don't really put the money into the tub. I mean, let's look at this. We pull an Arctic Spa, for instance. Great hand-rolled shell, okay? Whether 3 inches or 4 inches of insulation. So I know they got a great pitch about some magic fairy that lives underneath there and gives you free heat and all this nonsense, but the reality is, if we looked at that system, it's not that expensive to do. 3 inches of foam, simple as that. We pay for 3 inches of foam. Whereas if we filled that cavity, we're paying for 8 or 9 or 10 inches of foam. So we're paying 3 times as much to fill the cavity of a spa. And well, guess what? It's 3 times the R value. So I mean, it's pretty hard to argue when you strip out the pitch and just go to the numbers, which is the best way to do it. So you look at things like why do guys not clamp the joints on the plumbing? It's expensive to do. Why do they do a perimeter insulation system? Well, it's cheap to make a perimeter insulation system. Why do they go to China and put Rising Dragon parts and no-name electronics in? It's cheap. Simple as that. So these tubs from these big players are retailing at the same price as guys like Master, which is a good family-owned business. Bob Lardner and the group down there, these guys care. They're not an equity investment firm. They're a family-owned business. They're about building a top-quality product. So they're putting the money into the product. They're not spending a pile of money on the spin, the marketing, and the bullshit. And the truth is, if you look at the other group of big guys, they're not putting the money into the product, and they are spending the money on the spin, the marketing. And man, it's a big thing, because you can't do both. If you look at Tubbs in that upper end, you're going to see inevitably that they've done one or the other. They've either spent really good big money on building a really good top tub, and their marketing might not be quite as good. I mean, frankly, they might not be quite as prevalent in the discussion forums, which is all paid bloggers and industry people. They might not be quite as prevalent in the in the media and in the pitch, the whole bit. Whereas you look at a lot of those other guys that are building, frankly, mid-grade product, that are selling it as a top-end product, the reality is the cost of building the product isn't that great, isn't that high, and the product isn't that great. It's just that they've spent a lot of money on marketing. So there's the long and the short of it. You can either go to really good, solid guys that are building, and again, these are usually family-based businesses because they care. They're not just money grubbers. So you got Bob Lardner down at Master, you got the boys down at Marquee, you got Keith Scott at Beachcomber, even to some extent, and then you got the other guys, and a lot of the bigger ones. Look at Hot Springs. It's all owned by investment funds and private equity investors. So it's all about the bottom line, and you got to consider that both of these are good business models. In fact, the best business model is to build a mid-grade spa with some good marketing. It doesn't cost as much per tub, and you're still going to sell a pile of hot tubs. So what's going to look on a spreadsheet, what's going to impress the investors and pay the better dividends is probably, the other scenario where you've got a mid-grade product with some good marketing, some spin, some hype, and it's really just not costing you as much to put that product in the field. Whereas if you look at something like the Masters or the other guys that care, they're building great hot tubs. They're still profitable businesses, but you know what? They haven't sold their souls just for the money. There's still some conscience there. There's still some reality. They're believing in that they need to do what they say and say what they do and put a sustainable product out to the market. So that's it, and really that's it. The smaller companies, guys, unfortunately, this industry is too high-tech, too expensive for the small guys really to compete in. And if you really look at what the small guys, mid-sized small guys are doing out there, they're recycling used tech. They're not really building great hot tubs. The big companies that are all about the marketing and the spin and the profit margin, again, they're not doing it. They're not putting the money into the tub. It's just about a mid-grade tub with lots of marketing. Those other big guys, and there's fewer and farther between because they keep getting swallowed up by the big companies and by the private equity investors. That's where you want your money, because those are guys putting out solid quality product using the best parts, the best insulation. And again, we can argue what's the best, so let's go this way. Using the most expensive. They're putting the most amount of money into your tub. And guys, spin and marketing is brutal. You don't have a chance. Guys are really good at coming up with marketing and spin and advertising and ways of convincing customers that certain things are better. The real best way to determine that is the cost, the amount of money they put in. Listen, I'm a hell of a good salesman. In fact, I'm the top 2%, so, and not too many people outsell me on a floor. I could pitch perimeter heat lock insulation as the best insulation, and when I was done, you would pretty much be sold on the idea, because there's some pretty good arguments I can come up with. I could pitch Mylar reflective insulations as a good one, and I could pitch full foam as a good one. So you got a job. You don't have the time that would require to understand all the various nuances that go into this hot tub. And I know you think you're smart, maybe, and you're a good researcher. Forget it. I've been doing this for 30 years. I could talk about shell construction for literally hours, just about shell construction. I could talk about the effects of dew point on ozone production for hours. I could talk about the different types of foam and thermal drifts and what happens to expanding foams and captive blowing agents and what happens over time to foams and R values and thermal loss and conduction and convection. I could talk for days about hot tubs, and it's taken me 30 years to learn all this information. You don't have a chance. So kind of the spin in the marketing is going to spin you and market you. go with your common sense. Take what everybody's telling you and say, hey, what would logically be the more expensive route? It's probably the best route. So there's my 2 cents worth on the type of companies that you can buy your hot tub from. Have a great day. Thanks.